What's up, everybody? Welcome back to SSPN post spring break. Ethan, let me start it off with that. How was your spring break? Did you like the little time off?
It was nice, Jude. It was definitely needed. Just had a relaxing week at home at Bernie, Texas, where I'm from. Went to a couple Spurs games, saw the Indiana Pacers game on that Saturday, and saw the Greg Popovich record-breaking win and that crazy comeback victory over. I'm blanking on who it was
The
against.
Jazz.
The Jazz. Yes, thank you for saving me. And I saw those two games. Other than that, very low key. Got some work done, but nothing special. How about yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I was working a lot, had some baseball games to cover, especially that first weekend. There were a lot of baseball tournaments. And then I did a
Mm.
game on Tuesday. And then after that, we were pretty much wrapped up. But the rest of the week, I was hanging out with some people, but it was still, I don't know, it still felt like as soon as I got done with work stuff, I was doing stuff with people, and that was great, but I never felt
Hmm.
like I got a chance to really just relax
Mm.
and take a breath. I don't know. Definitely much needed though. I think that was the big emphasis there, like you said.
Yeah.
But anyways, I also went to a Spurs game before spring break, and that was on the Wednesday before spring break against the Raptors. A disappointing game, unfortunately,
Mm.
but getting free tickets, some pretty good spot. I was like, you know what, we'll go up there and do it. And then unfortunately, Pop didn't break the record. But the good news is, like you predicted, Ethan, you were hoping they would lose to the Raptors so they could do it against the Jazz, and that's exactly what happened. So we love to see that, and it's kind of an interesting point in the season now because I feel like since the record has been broken, it's very much a mixed bag whenever it comes to the emotions of the Spurs fans on whether or not they want to make the play in, whether or not they want, to lose more games to get a better draft pick.
Yeah.
Because it's like, you have a close game with Oklahoma City, you win, right? You beat the Warriors, but then you also were down like almost 41 time to the Pelicans. So I think it's just a very, now that that landmark of the Greg Popovich win record has been reached, like a lot of Spurs fans are probably like, get the record, okay, cool. And then there's some who are like, hey, we might still have a chance in this play-in. I think Pop still wants to get into the play-in. That's what they were talking about on the broadcast, at least. So kind of what are your thoughts on the post-record Spurs, if you will?
Well, I understand both sides. Like, as a Spurs fan, I will always want to compete and try and win. I never like watching a game if we know we're going to lose. And I don't think there's a single player or coach on the staff that really wants to tank. I don't think that's the mindset any of these guys have. In fact, they've really kind of ramped it up, everybody individually and as a team, trying to get, into that play-in spot. And this is where you and I both expected the team to be, right in that 10-11 range, which is where they are. And so I understand both sides, like wanting to win and then also wanting to maybe just lose these games now that you have the record secured in order to maybe get that next franchise level player next to a DeJounte Murray and a Keldon Johnson in this upcoming draft. But there's really not a correct answer, I guess, dude. Like, I wouldn't be mad if we ended up losing these games and got a high pick, but I wouldn't be mad if we got into the play-in tournament, won a game, maybe lost a game. Who knows? Either way, I'm not going to be upset. I guess my biggest takeaway is I don't want the team to try and lose, if that makes sense. Like, I hope they continue to be competitive, and that's what they've shown me up until this point.
Yeah, I think I'm right there with you on that. I don't think I could ever just, want my team to lose games,
Yeah.
especially this Spurs team, when you can go out and, I mean, granted, obviously Draymond got thrown out in that game. I watched that whole Golden State game
Hmm.
last night, and no Steph, but going out and doing that was a big thing for that team. And you don't want them to not have that moment, like Keldon's celebration on that. That was a
Yeah.
great moment for them. And you get those. You're giving Primo starts in a lot of these games too. And it seems like he's struggled a little bit with getting those more minutes. But when you watch him play, and this is just kind of down another rabbit hole, but when you watch him play, it doesn't feel like he doesn't know where he's supposed to be or what he's supposed to be doing. It just
Hmm.
feels like he's just going through his rookie moments. Like the shots aren't falling as much, but it's not like the shot looks terrible. It's
Yeah.
just like, okay, we're giving him more minutes and now he's having more rookie moments because we're putting him in the starting lineup and he's matched
Yeah.
up against, guys like Klay Thompson, which in the long run is a great thing.
Hmm.
That'll help him moving forward. But just kind of going back to that conversation of tanking versus going for the play-in. For those of you guys who don't know, the Spurs are 2 and a half games back from the Los Angeles Lakers right now for that 10 spot, and technically the Pelicans as well, because they're both tied with the same record at 30 and 41. So really the Spurs are 2.5 games back from the 9 and the 10 seed. So it is realistic for them, to possibly make it in there. But also I think that the way the Pelicans are playing right now and just the amount of stars that they have, I mean, not, crazy superstars, but with the trade of CJ, I think they just have a little bit more firepower with Brandon Ingram as well. Obviously they're missing Zion, but I think they've got a little bit more firepower than the Spurs do necessarily right now, at least right now when it comes to experience. And then of course the Lakers still have LeBron. So I just think it's going to be really tough to make it there, which is why people like our man Javi Chavez here, appreciate you being in here, appreciate Nick being in the comment as well, is saying. So I see the pros and cons. I'm not really going to be mad either way. If we get a play-in game, it'll be a fun play-in game with the guys.
Yeah.
If we don't get the play-in game, we get a better draft pick. And here is the other key thing of all of this, Ethan. The thing is, it really doesn't, making the plan versus not making the plan, unless the Spurs just lose every game and the Thunder, Kings, and Blazers proceed to just go on a run, at the end of the year, which is highly unlikely, that's the only way that the Spurs are really going to make a huge jump in their draft stock. And the other thing is, too, why would that even be, why do you even need to do that when you have 3 draft picks this year? Because when you have that lottery pick and you have the other 2 that are still going to be, well, it seems like that Celtics pick is creeping up, but still 2 first-round picks, not in at least the back half of the draft. So with those, it's like you can make a move and move up anyway. Yeah. Even if do you kind of get what I'm saying there? It's
I definitely
counterintuitive, I guess.
And the whole tank, I don't think that word is correct for our situation here, because there's 10 games left in the season. And just
this
looking
is
at
what
the
I was
10
trying
games,
to say. Shout out to Nick.
Yeah, I doubt we get into the play-in anyway, is what I'm thinking, even if we're going to be competitive. Because there's only 4 games that, just face value. There's 10 games left. Of those 10, only 4 that I'd be like, okay, those are winnable games. And 3 of them are against Portland, and 1 of them is against Houston. Otherwise, they're all difficult opponents. We got Denver, Memphis, New Orleans, Minnesota, Golden State, and Dallas. I don't know, I can't say for any of those games. I know we just beat Golden State, but I wouldn't bet on the Spurs in any of those other 6 games necessarily. So I don't think we have to try and lose. I just don't think we have a team that's good enough to make that push, especially since we're 2.5 games back and LeBron James is currently playing the way that he's playing. I know people don't like the Lakers right now and they're not a good team, but they still have LeBron James. And we don't have a LeBron James. So he's still probably going to make it in that play-in spot. And we'll unfortunately stay around 11 or maybe even 12 if we can break that tie. But yeah, good points.
Yeah, absolutely. And you bring up a great point about the schedule. I hadn't even looked at the games we have left. So when you bring up that, it's really what's the point here? But, you want them to keep going out and trying to win those games. But I think the Spurs kind of get the best of both worlds this year because we're tanking while trying to win.
Yeah, we're
tanking
because we're just not very good.
We're not exactly.
We're not purposefully trying to lose. We're just not good enough.
But you'd rather
win.
have it that way, and especially with an average roster age of 24. So that's another thing. And Javi, no, you may have misunderstood me there. So we don't get the Celtics pick. I thought it was top 4 protected. I'm sure it is. I was just saying that. When we traded for it, the Celtics pick was projected for number 19, and since we've made that trade and the Celtics have got Derek White, they have had a better year. So now it's not as low as it was beforehand, but still, a trade asset definitely when you have 3 picks in the first round. And so, kind of with that, we can talk about where the Spurs will be in the draft lottery and then maybe get into a little bit of prospects. I haven't really done a super deep dive. I know more of the big name prospects like Jaden Ivey, Paolo, Chet, AJ Griffin. The list goes on and on with a lot of the players in March Madness right now. But when it comes to where our draft lottery odds would be, I'm going to go ahead and look that up because I have not looked at any mock drafts yet this year. But I assume that the Spurs
has us at 8.
Mm-hmm. I was about to say the 8-9 kind of area.
That's where I've seen us too. 8 through 10 is most people have us projected.
So a little bit higher than we've had these past couple of years with Vassell and Lonnie and Luka and Primo. Yeah. Oh, Luka. Did y'all see that Luka got cut by the Knicks?
Oh, he did? No
Yeah. So
way.
I
Oh,
think the plan is this offseason, whatever money we have, we just give him it.
yeah, let's do it. Why not?
I think we get it back. You know. Um, but anyways, yeah. So this website has the Spurs at number 8, so it's going to be around that 8 to 9 to 10 range, kind of like you said. Some players that I'm just seeing here. There's a chance maybe Jalen Duren falls, but there's a lot of questions with him, especially the way he's been playing in the tournament. Maybe some
Yeah.
guys like Jaden Hardy from the G League, Ty Washington from Kentucky. Obviously, the Spurs don't want really we don't want more guards.
Yeah.
But when you're just looking at some of the names here on this list, that's kind of who we're thinking about. Maybe a Keegan Murray. That was somebody who the Spurs were interested in. He had a really iffy game against Richmond. I watched that one live. Some other ones that could maybe fall, Benedict Mathurin. I may be completely butchering his last name. Marjon Beauchamp is somebody else that I've seen connected to the Spurs. So really the only big is kind of Jalen Duren
Yeah.
that's kind of going to be in that area.
Let me ask you a question, Jude. If we get to that 8th pick, and let's say all the big guys are gone, like a Jalen, Paolo, Jabari, Chet, obviously, all of them off the board, and it's like a bunch of guards, and then if we were to take like a power forward center, which is really what we need,
It'd be a reach.
it would be kind of a reach. Would you rather, since we have 3 picks, just like draft the best player available at that point and then just get a big like at 18 or 17 or 23, wherever we are with the Boston and Toronto picks? Or would you rather us just like reach, say like screw it, like let's make sure we get a big in this draft because that's what we need?
What I would do ideally is I would trade for somebody. I would use these picks to trade for a big that is a
Yeah.
little bit more established and might have a little bit,
Do you
more
have anybody
potential.
in mind? I was thinking on the same lines as you earlier today, and I was trying to figure out a name.
That's the only problem. Yeah.
Yeah, because I don't want to at this point, John. I don't really want a John Collins type player. If I'm gonna trade like 2 firsts, like maybe you know what I'm saying. Like I don't want like that caliber player. I'd want a guy that's at least been an All-Star before, like a Sabonis, but he's gone already.
Yeah, and that doesn't look very good either with the way the
No.
Kings have been playing.
Well, that's the
Yeah.
Kings. I don't blame
Yeah.
Sab. It's the Kings.
It's funny you mentioned this because me and some friends were having the same conversation this weekend, and I think we came up with the name, but I can't remember it right now. But that's kind of what I'd like to do regardless with those picks is just trade for somebody that can get DeJounte some help. And, maybe those picks aren't enough, or maybe you have to throw somebody else in there to make it happen.
That brings me to my next question
Yes.
for you, Jude.
What is it?
If we can get a big man in this draft, possibly a Duren, who knows what we end up doing, would you be willing to trade a Jakob Poeltl at that point? Or would you rather maybe have Jakob start and have our lottery pick center back him up and move Collins to like the 4 spot off the bench or something like that? Or would you rather just move Jakob and say, you know what, screw it, we're going through this rebuild completely. We'll let Collins back up our young star, get something back for Poeltl while he's still valuable. Because I don't think Poeltl wants to back up anybody, in my opinion. I don't think he would be willing to move back to the bench.
That's a really good point, because with all of the recognition he's got this year, and he knows, and his agent is probably telling him like, bro, you can go get 15 million. I mean, or 18 million. There will probably be some places that will kind of pay him in between 20 to 15 million for what he does to start, right?
Yeah.
And so,
and he's going to be better than whoever we draft, at least initially, like for sure.
I don't want to do either of those, but I think, when you're talking about it, it feels like that we're going to have to. So this is such a tough question, but I think we need somebody more athletic, like
Than Jakob.
Yeah, to win a championship. I would love to keep Jakob and play him off the bench or something.
Well,
or we need a 4 next to him. Like,
Yeah.
I think he can start and be on a championship team, but you're gonna have to have another like super dynamic big next to him.
Yeah, there are some 4s that can play like the 3 also that are like 6'8" in this draft that we could take a look at, like a Keegan Murray and a Kendall Brown.
Maybe trading up I don't know if Jabari Smith is even anywhere near the possibility there. That might seem crazy to some of
I think
y'all.
he's top 3. Yeah,
Yeah,
he's
yeah.
at number 2 on this draft.
So I don't even know if there's any possibility that you could move up and do that. There's Paolo too.
Mm-hmm.
That would be maybe a little bit more realistic, but I still think at the end of the day, he's going to go top 4.
Your LSU guy, Tari Eason.
Tari Eason would be nice, but he would be nice a little bit later.
Yeah, he's at 18 on this, so we could maybe get him with that Toronto pick. I'd be fine with that.
I love Tari, especially just because he's a Tiger, but in all honesty, I don't think that his play style would be.
Really?
He's not. No, in the NBA, he's at best. I mean, maybe he becomes a starter in his career, but I think he's kind of just what he was at LSU. In all honesty, he's an energizer off the bench. He's similar to he's like, imagine Josh Richardson as like a 4.
Okay.
Like that type of, you know what I mean? Like he can guard, multiple positions, and he can kind of stretch the floor.
Yeah.
But
so if you have him, Jaden Hardy, and Patrick Baldwin Jr. all on the board still at that second, 17, 18th pick, you take somebody else, take the ladder.
I don't know. So the other thing is too that I didn't even mention about through all of this is you can draft the best player available and still trade him.
Yeah, you could.
And that might be the best move too, because then you can get, the most value out of your asset, especially if somebody falls. And say for whatever reason, obviously this is unrealistic, but say for whatever reason Jaden Ivey falls to number 8. You take him if you're the Spurs. And I don't know, maybe you even keep him and trade somebody else. Because he's a really good player, and I know there's all these guards, but and that would be definitely. I don't know. I don't think that would be a good pick. Honestly, I don't think that would be a good fit on the team. The more I think about it, obviously Jaden has a much higher potential than Derek White, but I just think that we've kind of seen how the repetitive, not elite shooting guards work out together in San Antonio.
Yeah.
But that's a whole nother ramble. The point is, if you take somebody like that, or if you have somebody on the board like that, then you do it, and then you can make a sign and trade for an asset, and trade them on draft night. So I think a lot of this, just throughout this conversation, is trades. That's what I feel like. And I just don't feel like we're gonna draft all 3 of those dudes. I've said this before on the show, but I don't think the roster numbers do not work out unless we're just gonna cut somebody.
Yeah, if we do, that means we're probably moving off of Jakob and Lonnie, and then maybe even one more guy, like a Wheezy, unfortunately, or a who am I thinking of? A Doug McDermott could be on the block too.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I know he's only been here for 1 year, but he's an older guy. He's a pretty decent contract for what he can provide a team. I really like him on this team, but he's a valuable asset.
And I think this year, the way that he played off the ball, the way that he shot, very attractive for a team like the Lakers or something.
Yeah, so. I'd like to keep him, but it's at a certain point, like you said, especially if we draft all 3 guys and keep them on our team, who's getting minutes? Are we going to send all 3 first-round picks to the G League? Really? Is that really what we're about to do?
So here's something else that I kind of want to talk about, and this is kind of another overhanging thing that probably hasn't been talked about too much, but it's been coming out a lot more, specifically from Mark Stein. If y'all know who Mark Stein is, he's a longtime NBA reporter. We used to work for ESPN, now works at the New York Times. Now he has his own Substack where it's kind of like premium content from the sources that he has around the league. And what he's hearing is that we don't know with everything that could potentially happen. But point is, there is some interest, and there's another team. I just saw this on Twitter. I can't remember. But the point is, Quin Snyder, San Antonio Spurs smoke. There's more of it than we've heard in a very long time. And Pop has the record. Earlier, Mark Stein, so he's reported both of these, and this was a couple weeks back, I want to say. He reported that Pop was leaning towards staying. Since then, he's reported more about Quin Snyder in San Antonio. And for those of you guys who don't know, we may have mentioned this on the show before. Quin Snyder got his start with the Austin Toros. Obviously he's built that Jazz team up, was an assistant coach with the Spurs. So, a homegrown Spurs protege, right? He's been away for a while, but he is, just like a Taylor Jenkins, a James Borrego, an Ime Udoka. All those guys, came through that same sort of coaching tree under Pop. And being in Utah, it seems like he's definitely more of a small market, kind of down to earth, go to a big necessarily LA. That's the interesting part because that's actually the contender. It's the Spurs and the Lakers are the two teams that have been mentioned next to Quin Snyder. And it really seems like he's actually, I think the more interesting part of this entire development is the fact that he wants to leave the Jazz.
Yeah.
That's the craziest part because the Jazz have just been I mean, yes, they've had their playoff struggles. They've consistently choked in the playoffs and they've been like the regular season champs. But at the same time, they've been consistently, a top 3 seed in the West for a long time. So if Quin Snyder takes over, his vision may change things up a little bit. Maybe he wants to trade for somebody, or maybe he's like, I don't think that any of this is going to work. Let's trade Keldon. Like, you know what I mean? So I just think that that's something else to kind of pay attention to, because if he ends up becoming the head coach, I mean, maybe it's not that much of a drastic change, but I have a feeling it's still going to be a different vision for the team.
Yeah. Wow. I never even thought about him leaving the Jazz, but wow.
Let me get this up so I can at least maybe read it better or confirm it. And that's what I probably should have put, honestly, as the headline of this episode, because this is kind of the biggest, it's all speculative.
I would get the Jazz not wanting him to come back or something, especially if he's a first round exit this offseason. I don't think it's his fault, but you're right. They've consistently done very well in the regular season and then done absolutely nothing in the playoffs. And unfortunately, in the modern NBA, it's all right, you had 4 years and you didn't get past the Western Conference Finals, or even get to the Western Conference Finals for that matter. So you're out of here, despite being a Coach of the Year candidate almost every season.
Yep.
That would just make sense in the modern day NBA.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. And especially with the way the Lakers season has gone, it would make sense that they would want to replace Frank Vogel. But I actually just found somebody put a screenshot up on Twitter from the article, so I'm going to go ahead and read it. So, yet as the playoffs draw near, with the Jazz mired in the 4th slot in the West since January 17th, and having convinced few NBA observers over the course of the season that they are headed for a long-awaited postseason breakthrough, no one in Salt Lake City has league insiders musing about his future like Coach Quin Snyder. In discussions with numerous officials from rival teams in recent weeks, I've heard questions raised repeatedly about how much longer Snyder, now in his 8th season, will remain there. As covered in my previous This Week in Basketball column, and this is what I mentioned earlier, Snyder has been increasingly mentioned as a potential target for San Antonio to succeed Greg Popovich. I've likewise heard Snyder's name posed as a probable Los Angeles Lakers candidate should the Lakers and Frank Vogel's part ways after what has been a nightmare season in Hollywood. But I think the other interesting, yes, the Lakers are appearing as a contender, but the interesting thing was, like he mentioned, 2 weeks ago, he first mentioned the Spurs, and that was when all of this Quin Snyder smoke started to happen. The first team that was mentioned was the Spurs. So, once again, we'll have to see all of this play out, and nothing's guaranteed, but I think it's interesting that that's the first team that came up in, once again, this same kind of scenario that, like you just mentioned, Ethan, basically what he wrote in that first paragraph about them being in the 4 seed and nobody really expecting a playoff breakthrough, it kind of does make sense because it's like they've ran their 8 seasons, It's kind of like, I don't mean to make this comparison, but it's like Brian Kelly leaving Notre Dame for LSU. And I know that college basketball and the NBA are very different, but, they went to the playoff multiple different times and they could never beat Alabama. They'd have 10-win seasons, but, they couldn't get over that hump that they wanted to, being a national championship contender. Or in this case, like Quin Snyder hasn't been able to get over the hump being an NBA champion, winning a championship in the NBA. So I think it'd be a different move if he went from the Jazz to the Spurs, because it'd be from a winning team to a rebuilding team. But still, kind of that same idea of, yes, they've had success, but we kind of know how this story ends.
And if I'm Quin Snyder, I'm looking at the Lakers, a dysfunctional organization with an aging superstar, a guy like Russell Westbrook they're trying to move off of.
LeBron's leaving. He's going to go wherever Bronny goes. He's said that. Which means AD isn't guaranteed to stay there.
That's true. Or the Spurs, a young team. Obviously, their culture is set because of Greg Popovich and R.C. Buford, and he knows everybody there. And, he can kind of put his stamp on the next generation, the next dynasty, if you will.
Really, when you look at the future of the rosters, the Spurs have way more talent than the Lakers. Like when it comes to young talent, right?
Yeah.
Like you
future
have
talent, yeah.
on the Lakers you have Malik Monk and THT.
I guess you want to throw AD in there, you can, but I don't know.
Yeah.
He's really injury plagued.
Well,
at this point.
how old is he now? 20, 27, 28?
He might be even. No, he's not 30, is he?
Yeah,
Let me look it up.
There's no way he's 30. But like THT and Malik Monk are like 24 or 25, right?
29.
Yeah.
Just turned 29, in fact.
Yeah. So when you look at the young talent and the
Austin Reeves. Austin Reeves. Thank you.
Okay, that's that. You needed. This is a for sure mention. Shout out to Austin Reeves. I remember watching him at Wichita State when he was kind of replacing Ron Baker. Then he transferred to Oklahoma, did a lot of work in the Big 12, and now he's getting buckets in the NBA. So shout out to Austin Reeves. That's another one. So right, you've got those three guys, but then it's like on the Spurs, you got Devin Vassell, Josh Primo, Keldon Johnson.
All-star DeJounte Murray.
Yeah, DeJounte Murray. Like, if you're like trying to build a franchise moving forward, you're actually going to have a faster start in San Antonio. And once again,
3 first-round picks.
And the other thing, those are the two places he's never been an LA guy. Like, I don't know. Yeah. Maybe you don't take up that chance. Maybe you just can't turn down the offer to be the Lakers. Maybe they offer him something, that's just life-changing, and he feels like, I want to be the Showtime coach. This is just such a historic franchise. I'm going to be on all the TNT. Like, there's a lot of appeal to it. You can get a lot more sponsorship deals out there. Like, you know what I'm saying? So
yeah, I get it. I get you.
There's definitely an appeal, but also he's only been in Salt Lake City and like San Antonio. Like, you know what I'm like? What? Those are two very small market teams. And watching Quin Snyder on the sideline, I don't think he's really like the most glitz and glamour guy. I've heard his press conferences as well. I don't know. That doesn't seem like an LA fit to me, unless he's from California, and I don't know, which I'm going to look up right now.
Yeah, Spurs has better job security.
Yeah. Okay, my man is from Mercer Island, Washington.
Big Spurs fan. Big Spurs fan.
Yeah, and then played at Duke. So, okay, and so he has also he did coach for the Clippers. That was actually his first assistant job.
I don't think he ever was an actual assistant for the Spurs. I think he was only the Toros coach.
You're absolutely right. I'm checking that out right now. But he was the D-League Coach of the Year in 2009 with the Toros. And spent 3 seasons there before he was an assistant with the Lakers in 2011 and 2012. So he's been in Los Angeles twice. That is something that I didn't know. But he has spent he spent more time actually in Austin, in the San Antonio Spurs organization, than he has with the Clippers and the Lakers. Spent 3 seasons with the Toros and 2 seasons individually with the Lakers and Clippers as an assistant. And then he was also on the 2013-2014 Atlanta Hawks team coached by Mike Budenholzer as an assistant. So that's another Spurs connection there. So even though it wasn't the Spurs, it was Mike Budenholzer, Pop protege. So that was the season where he said Pop is the real coach of the year.
Look at that. Interesting storylines, Jude. Something to look out for sure.
Very interesting. Any other Spurs news in recent weeks? Anything about players? Oh, Jay Rich. We should talk about Jay Rich.
We should talk about Jay Rich.
Yeah. I watched that game last night, man. I love watching him play. And I think what Pop said is exactly right. He brings a little bit of nasty. He's very confident as a shooter. He can score at all 3 levels, but really just his off-ball presence. Last night, when it was down to the wire, there was a play DeJounte was driving inside, and our man Jay Rich was just on the corner ready, in the right spot. It was kind of a little deep too, but I was just like, man, like, and I don't mean to say this because y'all know I love Derek White, but I was just watching and I was like, this is why like we made that trade, because now we have the spacing to where DeJounte can clear out and drive, and we can have Primo in the corner and Josh Richardson on the wing, which allows for one of those guys to be open because of the attention that they draw as shooters. And it was just like, yay. Yeah. But I like what he does too. He knows his role. Like, yes, if you look at the stats, he only scored last night, 25, 1 and 2. But it's like, that's all he needed to do. He literally just needed to be an off-ball shooter and make shots. So I love Josh Richardson. I hope that we can renegotiate maybe a contract. Well, actually we did. So he's going to be $12 million next year on contract for us. And I think that's pretty reasonable.
That is
Honestly,
very reasonable.
we're paying him less than Doug, and he's doing way more than Doug. In all honesty, I know Doug's hurt, but even before, like he's a way better defender than Doug, like just straight up. So honestly, really like that. Love Jay Rich. He's
He's definitely a great player. I love what he does for us as an off-ball shooter next to DeJounte and next to Devin Vassell. He doesn't need the basketball, like you said, veteran presence, all that great stuff. But I was thinking about Jay Rich earlier today. I keep saying that over and over again. I've been thinking a lot about the Spurs today instead of my actual. His best seasons were in Miami. You know, when he was like the primary ball handler there for a couple of years when they struggled after like Dwayne Wade passed his prime.
That was before Jimmy got there, right?
Before Jimmy Butler.
But they made the playoffs.
They did. I
Yep.
believe they did. Yes, they made it twice when he was there, 2016 and 2018. He averaged the most he ever averaged was 17 for Miami. Then he went down to 14 when he was with Philly, then 12 with Dallas, then all the way down to like 9 with Boston. And people were like, "What's happening with Josh Richardson? Why is he not being, as productive anymore?" And I think I might have figured it out, Jude. With Miami, they play kind of like the Spurs, where nobody really dominates the basketball. It's very free form ball movement with lots of screen and rolls, lots of handoffs, cuts, and whatnot. So that allowed him to be involved in the offense, even if he wasn't going to be, the primary scorer or whatever. And then he went to Philadelphia, so that went down a little bit. He became much more of a stand in the corner guy next to a Joel Embiid and a Ben Simmons, which is, obviously that's what's going to happen. And then he went to Dallas and Boston with guys like Luka, Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, very much ISO players. So he was basically just sitting in the corner waiting for his opportunity to knock down shots. And he's capable of more than that. Like you said, his off-ball movement, his defense, all of these things that they weren't really seeing in Dallas and Boston. So everybody was like, oh, he's washed. Let's give him to the Spurs. And also throw in a couple picks here for Derek White. And I know Derek White's maybe a better facilitator.
And he's been better for their team. For them, yes. That was a great trade for the Celtics, yes. Even though Derek hasn't gone crazy. Just
they
for their
needed
fit.
Somebody off the bench to be a facilitator when Marcus Smart became their starting point guard. That was a great move for them.
And another great defender.
Yes, but for San Antonio, we didn't need anybody to take the ball out of DeJounte Murray's hands. We already have DeJounte Murray, Kelvin Johnson, Devin Vassell, Joshua Primo, Trey Jones. There's not enough ball to go around. We need somebody to stand, move off ball, get open three-pointers, and knock them down. That's something Derek White struggled with all year long, and he's finally doing that with consistency. And he's even shown you a couple flashes, Jude, of athleticism that he's had pent up for a while. I know.
And Jay Rich is only 28, right?
Yeah. He's not. I don't know if he's 28. Let me double check.
I think I
want to say he is 28. Yes, he is 28. He is not that old, but he still has that veteran presence, and he talks a lot of trash. And he's a really funny guy. Great in the locker room. Everybody seems to like him.
Love his Twitter.
There's nothing wrong with Josh Richardson. I am so happy that we've brought him into this team, and I hope we can keep him long term. Honestly, because he's one of those guys like a Danny Green that you can slide into the starting lineup that maybe doesn't play as many minutes as
he talks more crap than Danny Green. He can put the ball on the floor way better than him.
Way better than Danny Green. He's got a lot of a bag, dude, that he just hasn't been able to show on his previous couple teams. But now in San Antonio,
is a bargain. I don't know.
Bargain. And my buddy Tanner Robertson, who's a lot of times in the comment section, he texted me the other day when Jay Rich was going off, and he was like, "Is Josh Richardson just like a more affordable Lonnie Walker?" And I was like, Yeah. It's not a bad way to put it.
He's better.
He's a better defender.
He may not be as athletic, but just fundamental. He doesn't make as many mistakes, I guess, is a way, and he's way more controlled. I
know Lonnie's averaged 17 points a game after the All-Star break. He's played a lot better, but I don't know if Jay Rich. I think Jay Rich playing as well as he's been playing as of late is really going to hurt Lonnie's.
He's doing the same thing that Lonnie is the problem. He's scoring 25 or 17 or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. At a more efficient clip too.
Mm-hmm. And he's more reliable because of his track record, experience, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I'm glad you asked that or brought up Lonnie, because if we do give Lonnie Walker a contract, say we bring him back to just be a bench scorer, whatever. What do you think? What would you offer him, Ethan?
I don't think I would offer him any more than $15 million a year, and I don't know. I wouldn't go maybe 2 years. maybe 2-year, 15 mil per year, so 30 million total. I wouldn't give him that third year option. I don't even know if I want to give him 2 years, honestly, but I wouldn't go more than 15 per year.
Yeah, when I look at what Doug and what Jay Rich specifically is making, I don't offer my man 10.
Really?
like 10 was my max. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. I saw something on Twitter today.
But is he really is somebody gonna offer him more than that?
That's my question. We might just want to play the match game here.
Yeah.
See if anybody offers him anything, and at the last minute, if he still has no offers, be like, all right, here's a 1-year deal, 10 mil. You get one more chance to prove it, and if you're bad, we'll trade you.
Maybe make it a 1-on-1 with a team option.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind that. But also, it's Primo coming up, and maybe you just want to play him as the backup too, and have Jay Rich start.
You got Trey, Jay Rich, Wieskamp. Who knows what you do with the other? You have 3 picks this year. Maybe you draft 2 guards. Who knows? And Romeo Langford too. We haven't even talked about him.
Yeah. Freaking Romeo Langford. He's just been hurt.
Yeah, he's just
played great that one game, except for shooting the 3. That's the only problem. That seems to be non-existent. But everything else seems to be pretty decent. Yeah. Not terrible, But maybe that's somebody that's a great idea, because with the Spurs development summer, I guess you could say, who knows? Maybe he takes a jump and just takes the backup 3 role, kind of like Keita Bates did out of nowhere.
Yeah.
That's
another guy that we haven't talked about.
Yeah.
Is he going to be back next year? We don't know.
Yeah. I mean, he had a great year. He had a fantastic year. Well, I think we can bring him back on a team option next year. I'm pretty sure we can bring him back on another minimum. And so even if we sign somebody, if we just want to bring him back for depth, I'm pretty sure we can.
I'm just trying to think, are we going to have space for him? It all comes back to
it all comes back to the draft picks. Yeah, it's going to be very interesting. And so I think one draft lottery, we'll have to see where that ends up. Because the other thing is, if the Spurs don't get, if they don't get called by the 7th or 8th pick, I'm pretty sure they're guaranteed to be in the top 3. They're one of those teams. So so when you're watching the draft lottery, I mean, most likely, it's just going to be Spurs at 7 through 10. But if that doesn't happen, that means the Spurs jump up. And so this will be the highest lottery odds that we've had since we've been doing the show. So we'll see what happens. But that's one to watch. And then draft night. Draft night is big to watch, because that's the other thing. We could draft somebody and then there's a trade. So, but I think the other key thing to keep thinking about is those names for bigs around the league that the Spurs could potentially trade for. That, I think, is the very interesting thing. Maybe some names that I could maybe think of are some Magic people. I don't know.
I was thinking Jonathan Isaac.
Jonathan Isaac or Mo Bamba. But I don't really think that really puts the Spurs over the top. I don't think that they're worth trading those 3 picks for. But
not all 3. Jonathan Isaac next to Pirtle at that 4 spot. It's dirty.
He's just been injury prone kind of too.
Yeah.
Throughout his career.
Yeah.
That's the only, and so 17 million, committing to that. I don't know if that's me personally. I don't think that it's putting you over the hump for being a contender. And maybe you can't do that in one move, but just with the amount of money that the Spurs have, if you bring that on, then you don't have any money to sign somebody else who can really be a difference maker. I think what the Spurs need to do is they need to trade everything, clear the cap, sign Zach LaVine, and then build the roster around the Seattle duo. But don't move back to Seattle.
Fair.
Also, the Spurs are not moving to Seattle, just by the way, because they're building a new training facility complex in Northwest San Antonio, and it's
over by La Cantera.
It's $2 billion. So yeah,
I'm gonna live really close to that.
Ooh,
big fan. My lips look really red.
My friends that I was with that are Spurs fans the other night, they live around in that area too.
Hey now,
so
Spurs, if you need some people to move some shit around, well, we're looking for jobs.
Oh yeah. All right. Well, I guess one other thing that I've kind of seen, and also that same friend group was kind of talking about, was Trey Jones, his play as of late. They weren't too happy with it. I guess I'm a little bit nicer on him, maybe. I like that he hit 2 threes last night.
Yeah.
That was great to see. 2 for 3 from three. But I understand that sometimes he can be a little bit out of control. Sometimes he tries to drive when really there's nothing there. Like last night, he had this drive basically into a double team and didn't even a foul, and it just turned into a turnover. And he really, like, the move that he was trying to make, it was like, that's just like, Trey, I love you. I hope you get there. But right now, you're not like that. So I don't know how to say it. Like, I don't know how else to say it. It was just an impossible move. Like, it was like only like a handful of players could make that. So what are your kind of thoughts on Trey Jones and his play as of late?
I've liked it. I don't really see like a huge difference in what he's been doing now than what he was doing earlier in the year. Now he's just getting 21 minutes a game instead of like 2. So naturally he's going to make a few mistakes. He's a second round draft pick and he's just all of a sudden being thrust into meaningful minutes. But I thought he's been facilitating like he has been all year long, and he doesn't take bad shots. He doesn't take the ball out of other guys' hands. Really, he's just a good backup point guard at this point. And he's a good defender too.
Yeah, I think it's kind of like what I said about Primo earlier. He's just getting
Yeah,
like significant minutes now, so you're seeing a little bit more of the youth
exactly.
because you're seeing more of him. So,
Last point from me.
yes.
Primo, what I like about Primo's mistakes is they aren't because he has a lack of confidence or doesn't know
Yes.
where his
And it
mistakes
doesn't
are
shake
because
him.
his mistakes are because he has way too much confidence. He's like, "Oh, I got this." He's like, "This is going to work." And then he just makes a mistake and it's like, "All right, Primo. All right, you're not there yet, but I like your mentality."
Yeah, he's fine. Like
Yeah.
you can just see it in his face, like
Mhm.
because he's never phased. So
Yep.
he'll be good. Everybody goes through a shooting slump throughout the year. But with that being said, I think that'll wrap up today's episode of SSPN. Ethan, do you have any final thoughts before we wrap this one up?
Go Spurs go, baby.
There you go. That's all we need to see. All right. Well, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel, like this video. If you enjoyed today's episode, you can go ahead and follow us on Twitter to stay updated with every episode announcement, all that good stuff at Ethan_Quintero and at Jude McLaren. And then if you want to buy some merch or you just want to go to a hub to kind of find our content, our podcast, all of our videos, etc., you can go ahead and head over to SpursTubeTV.com and you can find all that you need there. But with that being said, we'll catch you guys in the next one. We appreciate y'all and we'll see you later.